right, good morning, South by Southwest. How's everyone? We are incredibly excited to spend a few minutes with you with some amazing experts in sustainability here. My name's Hank Capps. I'm a family doctor. I'm the Chief Information and Digital Officer for Wellstar Health System. And I'm also president of Catalyst by Wellstar, which is our innovation company and venture fund. We're honored to be here with you this morning to dig into an incredibly timely and interesting topic, which is the intersection of climate and health and all of the both incredible innovation that's happening in the space today, as well as the challenges that are on the horizon as we navigate both a changing environment, literally, and a changing environment from a regulatory and otherwise standpoint. So it's very exciting times. We have some incredible people on the stage here with us this morning, and we'll kick off with just intros and a little bit about yourself, as well as the companies that you lead. So with that, Lee Catherine, I will let you take it away.
Awesome. Hey everybody, my name's Lee Catherine Bonner, and I'm the founder and CEO of a business, or business as we like to call it, called Bee Downtown. I'm a fourth generation beekeeper, and we install and maintain beehives on corporate campuses to help rebuild sustainable agriculture in urban environments, and simultaneously run year-round employee engagement and leadership development programming to our corporate partners. And Wellstar is one of those very special partners that we have bees with at one of their health facilities.
Hey everyone, and I'm Gareth, CEO and founder of Veckta. Veckta is a SaaS-enabled marketplace, and we help businesses assess, plan, and then buy the optimal energy system for their business to reduce their operating costs, increase their energy resilience, and reduce their emissions. Also a great partner of Catalyst and Wellstar. Excited to get into more of the discussion.
Hey, Eric Riesenberg. I'm managing partner and CFO of VoLo Earth Ventures, a venture impact and sustainability fund, really focused on circularity, sustainability, and energy transition. We're also partners with Catalyst, and looking forward to this. Thanks.
Awesome. Well, as we start digging in, I think the first big question is, why health and climate? How does it all fit together? As you described what you do, you all do very different things. We're a health system that takes care of people every single day. Our mission is serving those people in the communities. But we've certainly seen a significant shift in the types of services people might need as a result of changes that are happening in the climate. But broadly, there is so much innovation happening in this space. And so would love your perspectives about why health, why climate, and how do they even fit into the same conversation like we're having this morning? So Eric, I'll start with you from the venture and investment standpoint, and would love your perspective to kick us off on that.
Sure. This is a second career for me. My first was in the bioscience field for quite some time, working on direct impact to humans related to health. And it showed a lot. And, a lot of the shifting diseases that are coming out, you're seeing aging populations get more COPD. You're seeing maybe things that are related to environmental impact, but nobody's really done too much to kind of correlate the two. Although that research is happening now, and it's becoming more and more obvious. Heat is very obvious, especially in other countries where they're not, there's not reliable power or air conditioning. We're seeing that really impact health. But here in the U.S., it exists as well. And some of these impacts from climate could also be related to storms or droughts or all these other things. And we're seeing, because that increases health impact, we need innovations and technologies to also increase to deal with that increase. So when we look at things, we see that's a growing TAM, a market that keeps increasing. So we look at that from a venture capital standpoint as a very investable space, but we also have an altruistic mission to make sure that what we invest in doesn't cause the problems that exist. So we look at all investments for impact on health and carbon and everything that could cause those problems.
It's interesting when you try to boil that down to kind of very specific things that you could translate the changes that are happening in the environment to health outcomes or health issues. I mean, a very simple one, like you said, is heat. So even in the United States, one of the things that we've seen very significantly over the last couple of years is as temperatures have risen, and in places where those temperatures have become more extreme, you're seeing incidences of when you fall on black asphalt, it used to be that your risk from that was the abrasion, the fall itself, and now we're seeing a significant increase in second and third degree burns. It's just like a granular example of like something you wouldn't think of, kind of connecting to kind of that health outcome and the types of health issues that are happening. So it's a really interesting thing to see how those start interconnecting, and then what are the innovations that are needed? How are we going to have these new addressable markets that become investable and ways to innovate against that? Lee Catherine, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, we're the quirky wild card, I feel like, for Wellstar. I sent Dr. Capps a message on LinkedIn, and I was like, hey, Catalyst seems to be doing really awesome stuff, and I think we do kind of awesome stuff. We put bees on corporate campuses. Is this something that you would be open to? And an immediate response of let's set up a meeting, which I think was really awesome for us to just get that experience. And for us, the bees are more of this holistic approach to what we're looking at for long-term health for people. And when we put these hives on campuses, they're beautiful works of art that people get to see. People get to put on suits and work the bees with us. The honey produced from the hives, Wellstar gives back to the community. So it's not necessarily directly the patients that are there. However, there are patients get to see the hives and enjoy the hives. And one of my favorite stories is when we first started the partnership, there was the grand opening. It's a big carnival, and this older couple came up to me, and the wife looked at her husband and said, you tell her. And I was like, oh my gosh, what is going on? And she's like, you tell her, or I'm going to tell her. And I was like, okay. Do you not like the bees? Is something wrong? And she said, no, we could not get my husband to want to come to physical therapy. He would not come. He would fight it tooth and nail. And then all of a sudden, these beehives showed up, and it's where he bikes for physical therapy, and he can see them out of the window. Now he's asking, when do I get to go to physical therapy? Because he wants to see the beekeeper working the bees, and he grew up around agriculture. So it's this, it's a different kind of ROI, and I know we'll talk about that a little bit more later. But for us, that's where we fit in. We're quirky. But the bees are, as we look at holistic health, it is one of the things. They're an indicator species. They tell us if something is wrong in our environment at a faster pace than humans. And so it's a great visual representation to have the bees on a Wellstar campus for people to learn about and enjoy, and hopefully start to make some additional changes around their environmental impact as well.
Yeah, for sure. It's interesting that you bring up the perspective of the patient and consumer and how that intersects with health, because it's really been an evolving kind of perspective that people have had. I mean, we recently did a survey we have about 150,000 consumers and patients that have volunteered to help us in how we design future healthcare interventions. And recently we found that 88% on a survey said that this was something that was important to them that their healthcare provider was focused on, which is really a stunning number if you think about, of all the types of things that people might say is important in their healthcare provider. And I think it is comprehensive. It's things like the Bs. It's things like, the acknowledgement of the changes that we were talking about earlier, and as not-for-profits who are aimed solely at improving the health of the people and the communities, I think there's an increasing sense of that this has to be a part of how you are delivering care. So it's a really, I think, going to be a very evolving area of interest from patients and consumers as well. So Gareth, what are your thoughts about that intersection?
Yeah, my inspiration for energy and sustainability came from being mortar attacked in Iraq. It was a pretty extreme and eye-opening experience. I'd always been into environmental science, health, wellness, but until those mortar rounds were landing, I'd never actually thought about where our energy came from. And it dawned on me that today our energy is sourced from all over the planet. And in that case, we were extracting oil and gas from oil fields in Iraq. I was there representing the oil and gas industry to move in after the Gulf War. And then we were putting that gas and oil on ships, sailing it all the way around the world to the US, offloading it, sending it to a gas power plant, burning it, sending that energy down long transmission lines. And most of us don't realize that today we're all passive consumers of energy. We don't know where it comes from, if and when we'll get it, what it should cost, how sustainable it is. And so as consumers of that energy, we have zero control. And the only way to control it is to generate it and store it at our own facilities. And healthcare couldn't be more vulnerable to this in the long run. You cannot afford to have the power go out at a hospital because there is critical treatment going on. There was an example of Tacoma Hospital recently having to stop all surgeries and stop allowing any patients to come in because they had a power outage and they couldn't run the hospital on their backup diesel gensets. And so for me, this is about providing businesses, healthcare facilities with the control of how do we get our energy, what is it going to cost us today and going forward, because today we know that energy costs are only going to go up. As energy costs go up, that passes on the cost to customers. So all of this becomes very interconnected, and I think building on your comment before, Hank, about customer expectation, through your survey, it found that over 80% of people expect their healthcare providers to be reducing emissions, and over 50% expect to see energy efficiency and solar and these other assets being deployed. So that's the interconnection for me.
So just to jump off the economics briefly,
Yep.
How do you manage against constrained resources, constrained dollars, and this dynamic of needing to shift your approach to be less passive? What have you been seeing kind of broadly about the economic value proposition to moving toward more sustainable energy and the environment?
Yeah, we actually just had to launch a new strategy module within the business because these are very complex decisions. Where does on-site energy make sense for me? What should I build to achieve my objectives? What impact is it going to have for me? How should I finance it? And then who do I want to have build it and be my partner for that? Because these systems will last 25 years plus. And what is super exciting in the market is today someone will come in and finance the energy facility for you, build it, own it, operate it, and then sell you that energy back at a fixed cost. And so actually for businesses and hospitals and healthcare facilities, you don't even have to front it any money. But then downstream of that, you're now locking in an energy cost while all your peers and competitors are experiencing rising energy costs. So you get a constant differentiator and value stack because you're ahead of the game. And then there's lots of other holistic benefits that I think we'll talk about beyond the economics. But typically across the country, we see businesses can save between 30 and 70% in energy costs. That varies massively across the country. Where Wellstar is in Georgia, energy is cheap today, but it's consistently going up. And so at what point did the economic shift where it makes true sense to double down?
Awesome. Well, to pivot just a little bit to your own personal journeys, I think each of you have very unique experiences, and would love to kind of frame it around being a founder of a company and how you decided to do that. Like, take on that role of entrepreneur and founder in this space. And then Eric, I'll come to you about like what you're looking for in founders as you're trying to pick companies that you think are going to make the biggest impact. So Lee Catherine, start with you. Like, why founder? Why this company? Why entrepreneur? All the things that folks might be asking about someone who decided to dive in and create a network of beehives across all of these different corporates and locations.
It's a great question, because people are always like, "Oh, the crazy bee lady." Like, how did you convince the country's largest corporations to put flying stinging darts on their corporate campus? So for us, I'm a 4th generation beekeeper, and Bee Downtown was never meant to be a business. I just wanted somewhere where I could keep a beehive when I was at college at NC State University, and I asked my apartment complex if I could put a beehive on my balcony, and they said no. Looking back, I completely understand why they would say no to that.
Does seem reasonable.
Yeah, at the time I was like, what do you mean? Like, I'm on the 3rd floor, it's fine. And so I was interning for the property owners who own the American Tobacco campus in Durham, North Carolina, and that's actually where Burt's Bees World headquarters is located. And so when we brought the bees to American Tobacco campus, we brought them to Burt's, and media picked up on Burt's Bees getting bees, and other companies in the area started saying, we're looking for a sustainability program like this that gets people excited. And so originally all we did was put beehives on the campuses, and I kept them. My parents gave me, we did a Shark Tank episode when I graduated, not the Shark Tank. We did Mom and Dad Shark Tank, way more terrifying, honestly. And their rules was I had to pay myself a livable wage, show growth, and be profitable in the first year. So Bee Downtown has never not been a profitable company. I wanted to build a business that made money, not just raised money. And we've taken on investment once through Engage Venture Fund, which Wellstar is part of. But it kind of spiraled out of control, and companies started saying, hey, our employees are looking for fun things to do. Could they come work the bees with you? Or where does the honey go? Can we give the honey back to employees? And can you come speak on our behalf? And so it turned into this much bigger program than we ever thought that it would, where the bees really connect with people, and people get to see this visual representation. LED lighting is amazing, and there's so many wonderful sustainability programs that corporations run, but employees don't get to see them on a daily basis. They get to see the bees. They see the hives grow and contract in size. They get to put on suits, work the bees, and they become part of the culture of the organizations that we serve. Wellstar's your mascot is a bee.
Yes.
A bee before the
unrelated.
Bees came,
yes.
But they become part of the culture of the organizations that we serve, and so we now have over 500 hives in 8 different cities up and down the East Coast for more than 130 of America's leading corporations, and it's just a fun way to connect people to sustainability in a way where they feel like the small actions they take by setting up a garden at their own home, or just sitting outside by the bees and having their coffee in the morning. It's a very meditative state. The bees buzz in the key of C, so you're actually listening to music when you sit by the beehives. And we'll have a lot of employees sit there and drink their coffee, and they listen to this meditative sound coming from the hives, and it resets their day for them. So there's all these very small tangible things that come from the beehives that maybe you wouldn't think of to begin with, but it has turned into something bigger than I ever thought. But I get to share my family's story every day and bring agriculture back into cities, which is such a gift, because everyone has a connection to agriculture. They just, they might be one too many generations removed, but as soon as the bees show up, it's that link of this company cares. They care deeply about one of the smallest but most important creatures that we have on the planet, and then it kickstarts. We say the honeybees are the pandas of the insect world. They are the gateway into this larger conversation of sustainability that everyone wants to be part of because it's fun and it's enjoyable.
So how much honey is produced by a hive?
Yes, it depends. We say on average 30 pounds per hive, but we have some hives that skill of beekeeper, the weather, so climate and climate change really does play an effect in the world of the bees. But we have some hives that produce over 175 pounds of honey in a year. So this past year, Bee Downtown produced over 35,000 pounds of honey for all of our corporate partners. It gets special labeled. Like I said, Wellstar, half of it goes to the employees, the other half goes to the food bank to put a non-perishable food that is a superfood back into the Georgia just broader healthcare environment, which is really, really exciting. And it's you never know how much honey you're gonna get. My nephew says you get what you get and you don't throw a fit. And that's how it is for us with the honey as well.
Very cool. Gareth, tell us about your story. Why founder, why entrepreneur?
Yeah, I'm not sure looking back why I chose to be a founder. If you want to experience every emotion under the planet every day of the week, then that's the world of entrepreneurship. But for me, I think the real core was when I was working for a large corporation called VoLo, a large engineering consulting firm, and I created a group called the Mavericks because I was sick of the process and the bureaucracy and the red tape. And so I wanted to knock down these barriers to actually getting stuff done. And I realized that trying to change the direction of a big business was really hard. And so we had to go and do it ourselves. And the real kind of catalyst was more and more businesses were saying, my energy costs are going up. I'm experiencing more power outages. I need to be more sustainable. How do I do it? And as consultants, we're charging millions of dollars to run Excel spreadsheets. And we'd take years to come up with results. By the time we presented the results to them, they're already out of date because the market's dynamic and it's moving so quickly. And so we knew that we had to go and do it on our own. We needed to use technology to enable a dynamic analysis on behalf of companies at scale and remove that cost barrier to entry. And most importantly, remove the intelligence and the IP and ownership out of the consultant's head, which is a massive flight risk for companies, into a centralized source of information in the form of a technology stack. So started 2019 and immediately went into COVID. So my dreams of having a startup all sat around a whiteboard, ideating and innovating together was completely wiped out. We became a virtual company overnight. And we've gone through lots of trials and tribulations since. We've had our bank go out of business and all our money frozen. We've had to raise money multiple times. So it's been wild, but I wouldn't exchange it for anything because this is the best way to actually make immediate impact at scale and have control and ownership over driving that forwards.
So Eric, what are you looking for in founders and entrepreneurs? What are the characteristics or things that predict future success and impact?
Yeah, so we are a venture capital fund. We have LPs, so they're, we have to drive returns, and that is our focus as a successful venture fund. You have to do that. But our mission is to have impact. So how do you do that? Well, of course, you do everything that a normal VC would do. You look for great entrepreneurs, with the right drive. But they have to have the impact component to it, and they have to have that kind of foundation where they really want that as well. Where the intersection between traditional VC and impact investing misses often is at the it's at whether or not there's economic viability in impact-oriented organizations. And so we find founders who are definitely have the altruistic nature, want the impact. Gareth is one of our founders, by the way, but also really thinks about that economic component, that it has to win. It really does, because we have to return to our VC folks. We have to return them, and to make sustainability work, we have to return them what traditional VCs would be able to return them. So that was our focus and our theory, and I'm happy to say that we're on track for that, and we're already building our second fund around that. So it works, and we look for people who have some real path to commercialization as well. and it can't involve government subsidies. We see that is a pendulum that swings too many ways. And we knew that when we started, and we're going to continue that go forward, because to make real change, you have to have parity and economic value. And the parity component is that Gareth can't go and sell something to a healthcare system that costs them 10 times as much. It's never going to get approved. So he's really working really hard to say, look, you get 30 to 70% savings by moving to our system. That's amazing. That's the kind of stuff that really, really works. And then that's what we look for. We look for those innovations that really drive amazing impact, but that impact and that economic VC return is like almost aligned, but one has to dominate. So unlike other impact funds, which always dominated this one, and this suffered, economics suffered with the impact, we just wanted impact to be right up there. And so that's how we designed this, and it's been working very well for us.
So when you mention the shifting landscape of government subsidies and kind of the funding mechanisms, what do you think are going to be the top ways that these new startups are funded over time in the new environment of maybe the government subsidies and research not being a focus, but the need's still there, and this economics that you're talking about, becomes a fundamental part. I mean, like if you're not able to show a value realization in a time where resources continue to be more constrained, they're just not going to get out of the gate, to your point. So like what does your crystal ball look like on the balance of that, and how you're thinking about it in, as capital's been kind of constrained as well. I mean, like we've been in this weird time of capital constraint, the market's unstable, and now this new regulatory environment. What's your prediction about how that unfolds, and how the inertia is overcome, in a sense, for these new companies?
Yeah, I'm glad you brought that up, because it does it's counterintuitive in some sense that you could have change, with any political environment. But the truth is that electrons are critical infrastructure. So that from a power standpoint, we all need power. We also are starting to add things to our critical infrastructure that take power as well. I mean, we all know about the boom in data centers that are going to come up, and people are starting to come up with things that you probably wouldn't have heard of 5 years ago, talking about opening more nuclear plants and doing other things, because they need this critical infrastructure to be in place and successful, and the time frames in which they need to do it by are rapid. And so with that becomes a world of innovation behind it. And it's not so much, building a nuclear reactor or micronuclear reactor. It's about, how do you deliver stuff to the industries that need it? How do you support those industries in building what critical infrastructure they need? So we see that as not changing in any environment. It's actually growing. It's growing at a rapid pace. And so maybe there were innovations that were put in place on the tailwinds of the last administration's infrastructure bills and other things that are great things, but not sustainable without them. And I think we have to figure out, if those things can be converted to whatever end result can still work regardless of whatever administration's in place. That's great technology, but if it can't, it's not sustainable. And sustainability is, both what we think of as an impact, but also the ability for the company to continue. So, it's great to come up with amazing solutions, but if you can't actually conduct them, it's not an amazing solution.
Yeah.
So we need both.
Yeah, it's just a great point. I think that it's going to continue to be a tension that founders feel around how their funding flows, when it flows, what source it flows. But the bottom line is any disruption that happens, the innovation is going to follow, and we're in a moment of disruption. And so I think that also equals opportunity. It just may look differently than it did another season ago, as you eloquently said. So let's kind of dive into the corporate world of innovation. So both of you have lived inside big corporations, both trying to convince them of these amazing things to do, and also experiencing how that navigation actually happens to bring something to life. So I'd love to hear a little bit about your experiences of working with big corporates and how you think the big corporates can also be a part of this innovation ecosystem for founders. So Gareth, I'll start with you. Like, big corporates, what is it like? What have you learned, and do they have a role in this funding mechanism of kind of bringing some of these biggest needs to life?
Yeah, I'd say first of all, our mission is clean, affordable, reliable power for all. But we start with businesses because businesses have the biggest impact. They have the biggest energy consumption. They've also got the checkbooks to do something about it. The challenge with corporates in general is change is really hard because these are big, complex organizations. The stats show that only 12% of change management programs are successful. 2% of sustainability change management programs are successful. So we've got a massive gap to fill. And I think this is because we get used to the status quo, we get used to operating the way we've always done it, and trying to disrupt that is time consuming. It takes a lot of stakeholders. And so this is why we want to partner with Engage, which Engage represents some of the biggest corporations in the southeast of the US, Wellstar and Catalyst being a part of that, but UPS, Delta Airlines, Chick-fil-A, Coca-Cola, these are companies that have committed to how do we partner with startups to try and get more opportunities into our environment. And so we're always looking for what are those short circuits to find people who are willing to disrupt the system, challenge the status quo, test things out. And for us, we've definitely found that the best way to prove a concept is to start with a pilot. And so through our relationship with Engage and Catalyst, we managed to get a pilot study with the healthcare system, analyze a few hospitals, and then convert that into an investment into the business through both Engage and Catalyst Direct, and then turn that into a full contract. And so these are the stepping stones that you go through, but this is like a 2-year process. And so as a startup, that is still too slow. And I think, contracts enable businesses. And so it's all about trying to pinpoint who are the stakeholders who are willing to lobby for you, who are willing to knock down the doors and the barriers and support you to get these contracts at scale, to prove the concept, learn from it, adapt with purpose, and then we can all win together. Because I think one of the biggest misconceptions, following on Eric's point, is sustainability must come at the expense of profitability is the biggest misconception we hear. And in fact, it's the complete opposite. And the companies that invest in sustainability actually end up winning, maybe not in the moment, but definitely as a compounding impact over time.
Well, I think inside big corporates there's a natural risk aversion.
Yes.
Of how you've always done it, and some of that is for good reasons.
Absolutely.
In healthcare, it's a zero harm industry. So, when you're going in for your gallbladder surgery, it's not the moment you want us to fail fast, right?
Yep.
And so this kind of dynamic of risk aversion and change, like you talked about, is such a component of like the work with corporates. The second thing is the economic value, and a lot of times startups aren't ready to bring economic value because they're still learning. Yep. And so the faster the startup can actually translate that into real economic value or ROI, however it's defined, becomes another piece of the secret sauce. And you're right. Not all corporates are the same. Some have infrastructure that allows for a startup to land on the ground and make a difference, and some of them, are really built to be allergic to a startup landing on the ground. And so, as a startup, sometimes it's hard to figure out where those right pathways are. But I guess I may be a little biased since I sit in a big corporate, but the reality is that this change on the horizon, the amount of impact that needs to be made, and the way that the funding is going to flow over time really is going to, the big corporates have to be a part of it. I mean, they have to be investing and have to be seeing value kind of produced from it. So Lee, Catherine, you've been in a bunch of big corporate. I mean, how many corporate campuses you said? What's that been like? What have you learned along the way? Are there any secret sauces for other startup founders out there to successfully work with big corporates?
Yes. So working with big corporates, it can go. Porsche took 3.5 years. Wellstar took a couple of months, and so it is an interesting. We always say we're here for the long haul, and we will keep checking in, but we will still be here when you're ready to say yes. One of the things we teach at Be Downtown and we teach to employees is biomimicry. So I don't know if anybody's heard of the term biomimicry before, but it's where you take and look at naturally occurring processes to use those to generate new ideas or solve problems in our human world. It's typically done in engineering. Airplane wings are designed like bird of prey wings to be more aerodynamic and use less fuel. So honeybees are a super social species, though, and honeybees have been around for 100 million years. Honeybees are the masters of fast adaptation. There's a military term called VUCA, volatile, uncertain, complex, and ambiguous. It is the world that we live in now, and the corporations and startups are great at this. They understand the VUCA world. They adjust and adapt quickly because they can. They're lean, they're nimble, they don't have as many people. You try to get an organization of 30,000 people to come up with a new idea and get to consensus, it's going to take years. For a honeybee colony of 65,000 bees, it can take as short as 3 hours to as long as 3 days to come to consensus. So there's all of these lessons we can learn on how you build high-performing teams, and it's one of the things that we talk with our large corporates about is if they dig their heels in and they don't have the ability to adjust and adapt, then they won't move forward fast. They'll get stuck. And so Catalyst by Wellstar is so special because it is focused on working with startups. And there are lots of corporations that have branches like this where they're saying, and they're noticing, we need to take on the spirit of the startup. We need to grow and develop in that way. And the only way we're really going to be able to do it is if we start working with startups to get that infusion back into our organization. And so that has been something that we have loved working with Catalyst by Wellstar on and a lot of our other large corporates where we are part of that startup arm and we move so quickly, but we have learned the lesson from biomimicry of the honeybees. That's how you stick around for 100 million years, is you adjust and adapt to your ever-changing environment. And if you are a startup founder and you're trying to figure out how you grow and develop your corporation, that's important, is to be able to adjust and adapt and to hopefully find really awesome investors that are willing to work with you as you adjust and adapt. Because Be Downtown is a very different business than what I thought it was going to be 10 years ago when I started it. And if you don't have investors that are willing to sit in it with you and help you understand the business you need to create and how it won't be perfect the first round, and that you will need to make adjustments to it, that's a big piece of the puzzle.
I don't know that I've ever thought about bees coming to consensus before.
I love it.
So I feel like there's so much that we could go into, like how that happens, what that means as a science geek. Like, anyway, okay, I will get us back on track, but like that's just very cool. So, we've talked a little bit about, ROI a couple of times, whether the economic value, the team member engagement, satisfaction. What do you think are going to be the biggest value drivers as you look down the road in work that a corporate or other organization could be doing as it relates to sustainability? What do you think are going to be kind of the top three, say, value drivers going forward? And Gareth, I'll start with you, and then I'll follow with Eric with his perspective.
Yeah. Well, there's definitely the hardcore operational aspects. For us, operational continuity is the most important. If your business loses power, then you can't provide the service you need, and that has massive commercial impacts. We're seeing more and more power outages, both in terms of frequency and duration. So more and more businesses are becoming sensitive to that. $150 billion a year in economic activity is lost as a result of power outages, and that's only growing. So first of all, it's about how do you ensure that your business can operate. Second, energy costs across the whole of the US on average have gone up 23% in the last 4 years. That is only going to continue to accelerate. So businesses that are not proactively trying to control that are going to be at the mercy of their margins and their profits, and they're being constantly eroded. But then what is super exciting for me is looking beyond that. And we recently did a partnership with a company to look at one of the solar assets that Wellstar is considering deploying at one of the hospitals. And what we're able to show is by deploying a small solar system, in terms of the holistic impacts on the ecosystem, it can create 2,800 hours of life saved as a result of the emission reduction. It can save one species, and it can create $7.4 million of economic value. If you now start scaling that out across a hospital system or across the industry, you can have massive and compounding impacts. And for us, it's about constantly realizing those compounding impacts. And as more and more patients are demanding this of their facilities and of their providers, we see that 20% increased sales for businesses that are more sustainable than their peers, 50% greater employee retention, 6% increased share price. So these are all factors that really play into it. And so we need people to look beyond like the immediate dollar savings, which can be good, but if you start actually exploiting it at scale in a holistic way, it really has an impact.
I think the short-term, long-term tension that any company is challenged by is also kind of a key kind of factor to contemplate in all of this. Like, what are the values you can derive right now, because we need that value now to create kind of momentum, and then to your point, the force multiplication over long time horizons, large scale, is something companies don't always focus on, and I think some of the innovation work that you see in corporates are aimed at helping not just have that short-term view, but that long-term horizon. And when you're doing venture investing, and they're 10-year illiquid assets essentially that you are investing in, you do have to have that kind of long-term kind of view as it all kind of comes together. So Eric, as the investor and the CFO on the panel, how are you thinking about this value realization and your top three in this new environment?
Yeah, I think in this panel it's probably a little bit more B2B focused than B2C, because the consumer doesn't really have a lot of choice in how healthcare systems and large corporates buy their energy and do stuff like that. But in the sense of an organization, kind of like the bees, I think everybody needs to first get together and have a cohesive thought on really what they want to do before they start really figuring out how to implement it. I'm sure the larger the organization, the more independent pockets of thought exist, which doesn't help anything, because they really need to be together and understand where the critical need is. They need to understand who the stakeholders are that are involved in procuring, and that it impacts, and down the line who's going to implement it. And then I think the other major thing is really ensuring that your vendor that you're going to go with really has the capabilities. And it hurts, because in the startup world, that's very hard to prove, and that takes time. That takes time in itself, and the more pilots that go out, the more tests. Those are great. But yeah, it's about that organizational alignment first. After that, defining that critical need, key stakeholders, and great vendors. And if you can get those things aligned, organizations will move actually faster than traditional, because big companies are like big ships. They turn very, very slowly. But if an iceberg is coming, they try to turn a lot faster. And that's the criticalness of it. Like, what is that iceberg? Is it, the coal plants are shutting down. The natural gas is being cut off by our adversaries because of a political issue. These are real things that can happen. They are happening. So now is the time for these organizations to rethink these things.
Absolutely. Hey, Catherine.
Yeah, we are the kind of weird ROI of how do you bees, what's the ROI? And we have...
You've never gotten that question before, I'm sure,
no,
in any pitch. Yes.
And when you're a founder and you're trying to figure out your business and a business model that is, it's bees on corporate campuses, what is the ROI? And we are a for-profit. We didn't want to be a nonprofit. We didn't want to be beholden to government funding. That was a big deal for us. And agriculture has value, and we wanted to make sure that we showed that, because that is so important in our world, is people understanding the importance of agriculture. But telling a Fortune 500, oh, well, agriculture is important, that's the ROI, doesn't necessarily get the corporation on board with you. So as we grew and developed and we learned that employees loved these bees so much, we realized we can give them surveys at the end of their hive tours and when they get their honey. And so we ask employees, does this make you feel more committed? And we chose that word very intentionally. It used to be proud, and then we changed it to committed, by having your company invest in experiences like this. And over 90% of employees say yes. Over 95% of employees across all of the corporations we work with say they want more Be Downtown programming because it brings them joy. We spend most of our day and most of our lives where we work. It should be a joyful place to work. And when your corporation invests in even these things that might seem small in the moment, like beehives, to bring you joy, it retains top talent. And we know that people are getting burned out in healthcare right now. And if one employee stays because they love these bees and they love what their employer is doing as that visual representation, they have paid for themselves already by one employee staying. And so that to us is, as we try to learn our ROI, it's a different version of ROI than what other startups typically will pitch to investors or to corporations. But ROI doesn't have to be the same thing across the board. You just have to learn how to clearly define it for the corporations and the customers that you're trying to interact with and sell to.
Yeah, I love joy being one of our last comments for the panel, so I want to thank all of you for being a part of today. We're going to open up the floor for any questions briefly, and then go from there. The ominous microphone is standing in the middle of the room. If anyone would like to ask any questions, come on up. It's a part of the test, to see who would actually go to the microphone.
Hi, thank you so much for your thoughtful perspectives. I was just wondering, as an individual in an organization, where do we start if we work within a company or in a community that isn't putting sustainability at the heart of any of our business decision making? All of you are talking from a very advanced sort of position and life cycle. So I was just wondering, how do you start, and especially as a leader within an organization?
Yeah, I love the question. We started actually by trying to sell into people with a sustainability title, and then we realized actually sustainability never typically has a budget, that there is an influencer. And so now we've started speaking a lot more to people with finance, operations, real estate titles. And I think what we've found is these are decisions made by a village. It's not a single decision maker. And so the key is actually being able to consistently present data, stats, statistics, pull through, ROI, being able to actually convey the opportunity to the business holistically. And I think nothing happens unless it pencils. And we've actually never seen a business invest in a system unless, from a sustainability perspective, unless the cost is at parity with what they're doing today, or there's actually significant cost savings. So the key for us is we always think about how do you assess your organization across the board super quickly? How do you determine where you get the greatest return on investment? Is it worth people's time, attention? Let's kill all the bad projects very quickly because that's going to get people frustrated. Let's show the quick wins and then let that then snowball and compound. And we found that if you can just get that one or two people who can make that first step, then it starts becoming infectious because everyone starts seeing the value and opportunity. And a big part of this is social license internally within an organization. People want to be able to have like an ego boost. They want to be able to demonstrate they're having an impact. And so how do we empower people to be able to go and deliver on these good news stories and opportunities, but while also driving more profitability, more sustainability, more share price? How do we tie it back to the way businesses make decisions, but also tell a good news story?
I think some of it's also the mission of the organization and how you can connect the work back to the core mission of the organization. And then I think that change can happen from grassroots. So an individual who has a passion and sees that connection to mission and can then bring it to life against the value, however it's measured in a company. And you ultimately need that executive sponsor leadership that sees that grassroots kind of view and says, you know what, we can go make a difference. And that's how you really start that movement inside a company. And whether the company's small or large, all of those things really have to happen to kind of see that change be generated across the company. So it's an amazing question. I think no matter what, you can certainly make a difference wherever you're at in your company in something like this. Next question.
Okay, so this is for my Be Downtown friend. I love the concept. I love the product. How did you go from having a concept at Burt's Bees at their headquarters to identifying that your target customer is an office building, an apartment building, being downtown? Like, what was kind of the dichotomy of that, and then going to venture capital and saying, hey, I have this product, scaling that? That is very intriguing to me.
Yes, that's a really great question. We, like I said, Be Downtown was never meant to be a business. It just did snowball just like way out of control into what it is now. But for us, because we didn't take on investment at the beginning, nobody was going to give us investment at the beginning. I'll just that just wasn't 100% not going to happen. And so we had to figure out what groups wanted. And so I come from a family of storytellers, and a big piece of becoming a good storyteller is learning to listen to the story being told to you at the same time. And the story being told was that these organizations and corporations needed something that was tangible, that people could enjoy about sustainability, because it was, as much as we're 10 years old now, that's still relatively old in the grand scheme of employee engagement through a sustainability landscape and framework. And so as we listened to these corporations and we learned that they wanted more and more from us, we realized that this is the ROI. It's not what we think it is. It's what they're literally telling us it is by what they're asking for us in return. And so that is slow is smooth, smooth is fast. We went slow. We built the program we thought and we heard people wanted, and because we didn't take on investment, we were able to do that and figure it out slow so that we could move forward faster. And then when we decided to take on investment, it's the only time we've ever taken it, was through Engage Venture Fund in Atlanta. What I found out after the fact was we were in the first cohort. They take 10 corporations a year now, or every cohort twice a year, and our application got moved through the process because they thought it was going to give a brain break to the people reading applications as a fun, just like, oh, B people, like, nice, I'll read this one. And it kept moving through. And then we made it to the finals, and I went out to Atlanta, and the fund said no, like, she's not necessarily as high growth, she's not tech, we're kind of wanting to focus on tech. And two of the CEOs that were part of the fund said, if you don't take her, we will just fund her ourselves here because our corporations need this. And so we got in, and to this day we work with more of the corporations within that fund than any of the other startups that have been part of the fund.
With that, thank y'all so much for your time this morning, and thank all of you for the incredible insights.
Thank you, Hank.